Hey, good morning, Eastern Oregon, and welcome to this August 8th version of AM Live on EOA, your connection to Eastern Oregon, and we are on the EOA network. That's where you can find our link tree. If you go EOA, like www, only you don't have to type that in, EOA.network, that will take you to all of the places where our content is distributed. Facebook, YouTube, the web, and so on and so forth. Roku, yeah. And here in a bit, LeGrand Police Chief Gary Bell is going to be with us. How are you this morning?
Morning.
Yeah.
It's First Friday. We're already at First Friday.
Yeah.
First Friday for sure. There's a lot of fires in Oregon right now. They're saying that it's most likely going to be the worst fire season since they started recording in terms of acreage burned.
Yeah.
They started recording in 1992. So.
Wow. Did you follow that little fire that happened right up above Tamarack Springs?
I mean,
yeah,
they had it out within a short amount of time.
They did, but that could have been bad. Yeah. In fact, I saw John J. Howard posted some pictures. He's a Facebook friend of mine. He had walked up to where that was, and he said it was less than a quarter of an acre.
I wonder what caused it. Was it lightning?
He said it was a lightning strike. Yeah, he said in fact he had a picture of the tree. I should have loaded it. Had a picture of the tree that had been struck and had caused it.
I'd much rather it be lightning than ignorance.
Yeah.
Do they call it negligence? I call it ignorance.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a form of ignorance, right? You're being ignorant about something if you catch something on fire without.
Yeah, it is. You know something I never thought about as a kid is, setting a fire like with a hot muffler. If you drive through weeds.
Oh yeah, that's why they restrict off-road vehicles in certain areas.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, I don't know, but maybe that's, I don't know.
I think I've told you before there was that big fire on the west side in the Cascade Range, where the guy was shooting a .50 caliber with tracers into a dead tree. It's like, come on, dude.
That
bullet
crazy.
Is burning. That's why you can see it.
Yeah.
And you're gonna shoot it into a dead tree. He had to pay. It cost him. I'm sure he's still paying on it.
Years ago, I wish they still had it up in Wallowa County. At that shooting range up there, they used to have a machine gun shoot. It was like super cool. It's probably been 15 years ago now. Really interesting. Maybe longer than that.
Never.
Anyhow, so then everybody would bring out all kinds of guns or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, all the fun stuff.
Yeah, but they had .50 cals or they had machine guns with tracers, But the fire department was standing by, and so it was if you're shooting tracers, and for those people that don't know, a tracer is like it's a bullet that has a little bit of, the fire follows the bullet, so you can see where it's hitting.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's just it's mainly to see the path of the bullet,
right?
Because you're going to see where it's hitting on the target. Like,
maybe not.
Most likely, but if you're more or less to see the path.
And but you're right. That's a great way to say it. To see the path of the bullet.
Yeah.
So, but. It has fire. It's flammable. That tracer is the way that it gets illumination is that it's a spark of some kind. Anyhow,
that starts fires.
Yeah.
Have you ever shot a machine gun?
Yeah,
they're fun.
I did. That particular.
They're expensive to shoot, but they're fun.
No, it was fun because it was like you could pay. I mean, I think I shot an Uzi with a silencer. They don't call them silencer. A suppressor.
Yeah, there you go.
A little Uzi, and I think it was. I don't know. It was 30 rounds for $10.
Yeah, and that's just not.
And it was like, and it was on.
I've shot Mac 10, I think it is, or Mac 11, and it's 45.
Yeah.
Shot it with a suppressor and without.
Yeah.
Without the suppressor, those things. I mean, think about a 45.
Yeah.
Like it's.
Yeah. Brady, he was young then. Maybe he shot the Uzi. I can't remember. Anyhow, but we also shot a Desert Eagle.
I've shot a 50 caliber. I've shot a 50 caliber Desert Eagle.
Really?
Handgun.
I was gonna say
and a 454 Casol, which is like the guy who invented the Casol. His last name's Casol. Mm-hmm. from shooting his own gun so much, he had to have both of his wrists surgically repaired because it's got so much whop to it.
Yeah, I can imagine. You see videos all the time of people who don't realize the kickback, and they'll shoot it, and it just like flies clear, or hits them in the forehead or whatever. Yeah, it's like.
Bud said it's phosphorus in the bullets, and yes, that exactly is what it is that burns.
What's that?
It's phosphorus in the bullets.
That's it. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, anyhow, okay. Well, you want to do sports?
Let's do it. AM Sports Report brought to you by Northwest Furniture and Mattress. Great selection of mattresses, recliners, and other home furnishings. Transferring spaces one room at a time. Big red rocking chair on Elm, off Adams in LeGrand. Northwest Furniture and Mattress. EOU football has their conference media day today, which is basically kind of the kickoff to interviews from me and a ton of EOU football content. I'll be present via the Zoom meeting today for the conference and kind of come back on Tuesday with a little information about this year's team's hopes and goals. And we're going to get, we got a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. He's been coaching. He played here, Solo Taylor. It's going to be, it's a little different look for EOU this year. We had Austin Brown as the offensive coordinator. The new offensive coordinator, Leon, comes from College of Idaho, which is EOU's biggest rival. It's always interesting. We'll see how that goes. But I think EOU should have a pretty good year. They got the senior quarterback coming back, Quincy Glasper, and he had a good year last year. I think he's the best quarterback in the Frontier Conference, and we should see that this year. We'll see how the offensive line does. That's always the big question for EOU in my eyes, is what's that offensive line going to do? How much time they're going to give their quarterback? And defense for EOU is usually fairly solid. The big question would be the new offensive coordinator and the offensive line. Over the next couple weeks, as we ramp up for fall football, you have an opportunity for advertisement during Pendleton, Baker, and LeGrand High School home football games. For more information, you can either contact any of the email addresses on the screen or office@eoalive.tv, or you can message us right here on Facebook. It's pretty cool. We're doing all 3 teams' home games this year, and that's 12 games in total. Each team has 4 home games. It's weird. All 3 of those GOL teams only have 4 home games and 5 on the road. I don't know if we just give up home games, but it seems like it was the same last year to me.
There were 5 home games.
Was there 5? So we flip-flop. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's still such a weird conference. We play 4 conference games. That's it. And that's what decides the conference. We have 5 non-con games and 4 conference games. Yeah. It's weird. We got to do something about that. I think Oregon's got to figure out how to restructure the GOL, and I don't know how to do it because there's no other 4A teams over here. So, also during the next couple of weeks, we'll be putting out Shrine highlights. My boy Benny hammered this one out this week. Let's take a look at the week leading up to the game. as you can see, there's a lot of things going on during that week, and we have fun with it. I really have a good time the week before Shrine and getting to know the players and just kind of following them around, trying to get some content and kind of trying to document their experience in Baker. It's a great experience. Last up, Cade's Courage. There's a QR code on the screen for the GoFundMe account for the McKinley family. If you have the means, go donate. If you're not about the GoFundMe thing, there's an account set up at US Bank under the name McKinley Family or Cade's Courage where you can go and donate. Cade is a 3-sport sophomore athlete at LeGrand High School, and the family's going to need some help over the next 18 months or so while he battles a rare form of Ewing sarcoma cancer. So if you have the means, go donate. AM Sports Report brought to you by Northwest Furniture and Mattress. Big red rocking chair on Elm off Adams in LeGrand.
You know, I want to drive one of those little go-karts, one of those little
Shriner ones?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I remember seeing they had little drive mobiles like that. Seems like we're in Casper where I grew up. They had a little. Seems like they were little fake old cars. So it was a go-kart, but it looked like a Model
That's what
T
the
or something
clown
like
was in. They had a clown. The Shriners had a clown in it this year. I don't know if there was any in the video footage, but yeah, he was in like a fake little old car.
Yeah, but yeah.
I don't want to drive one.
You don't want to drive?
No.
Yeah.
I could. I wouldn't fit very well in it.
I want to see you. I mean, even those little 4-wheelers that they use, they're little kid 4-wheelers. Yeah.
That would be like me riding a moped.
Yeah.
No, not doing it. No.
No, but when we're setting up on Shrine Day, Saturday morning, they all drive by us. They're stagings. I don't know where they're at, but they drive by the trailer, and every time I hear them go by, it's like, oh. So one time I have to snag them, like, hey, let me ride that for a minute.
I don't know. I don't think they'd let you ride it. I think they treat those things like they're kids.
Yeah, probably. They probably only use them once a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they probably like spit shine them, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's probably like a.
Well, and you and I were talking about that. Can the investment that the Shriners have made in order to do that event, even in the football equipment. I mean, in order to make that happen, you said they have a trailer of pads and all that stuff.
All the gear, yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
I think the players just have to bring their own helmets, maybe shoulder pads. I don't know, but I know they have pants and pads. And,
yeah.
Oh, I have more these bracelets too. If anybody's interested, they're Cade's Courage bracelets. They're free. If you want one, just message me or stop by the studio.
All right, cool. All right, well, here in just a minute, we're going to take a commercial break. We're going to take a commercial break now, and then when we come back, we will have LeGrand Police Chief Gary Bell with us. We'll be right back.
good and it could be bad.
That's busy.
All right, we're back with LeGrand Police Chief Gary Bell. How are you, man?
Doing well, thank you.
Good.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Always.
How things been?
Very good, but busy.
Yeah.
Summertime, and my wife and I have been busy, and we've had lots of things going on at the office, which is, sometimes when I'm talking to people, they'll say, "Hey, how are things?" And seems like sometimes I feel bad because I just always say it's busy.
Right.
But it is. It's always busy. I mean, I wish I could say otherwise, but there's always things going on, and we're lots of different types of things that we're hiring, and we were fortunate enough in this most recent budget process to be able to add 2 dispatch positions, and so we're in the process of trying to get those positions hired, and but then there's lots of business, and we had a robbery earlier in the week, and those investigations take there's a lot going on behind the scenes. As an example, I mean, investigators, police officers, and the lieutenant and I mean, those are all nighters. And it's kind of an all hands on deck, to do everything we can to bring those cases to resolution. So, and then all the rest of the stuff is happening, while we're doing that. So it's just busy,
Yeah. We'll go back to that in just a minute. But is a full moon a thing? Do you guys ever get?
When I was a young person playing baseball, I had some superstitions.
Yeah.
I kind of gave up on that.
Right.
I don't really believe in that kind of stuff, but it's a real thing.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I know people that are skeptical, and I'm that way too.
Yeah.
But there are times Tanya will come home, because she's the scheduling coordinator at the specialty clinic at the hospital,
right.
And she's like, "Yeah, it was a full moon day today." I mean, it was just like,
Yeah, I don't know about the science of
right,
it,
yeah.
Brent, but I'm telling you that there are times that, and sometimes I think that it's just the perceptions of things. As an example, we have a lot of full moon nights, or we have a lot of full moon, but then when you have one of those nights and you look up and the moon is as full as you've seen it, and it's like, oh, must be that.
Yeah.
But no, there's lots going on.
So, kind of walk us through, thankfully, I'm just guessing that, that interaction of the guy holding up the store, he only got $100. I mean, that whole interaction maybe took 30 seconds, I'm guessing, if that. I don't know. Thankfully, he was in and out. And then give me an idea of what it takes to process a scene like that.
Sure. Well, first, I'm happy to visit with you guys about that, but I just want to preface what I'm going to say with the fact that this is an open and ongoing investigation. And so there's some specifics I think that you guys and viewers will understand that I can't speak to. But what I can talk about is just generalizations of these types of investigations, and first and foremost, our officers get those calls for service. They come in through 911 typically, and our first priority is always life safety. So officers they want to make sure that everybody's okay, and obviously not very far behind that is we want to apprehend those responsible for inflicting, whatever has occurred. And in this case, fortunately, the persons that were there were okay. I mean, they were very traumatized, as you can imagine. And there's a lot of variables in these cases, in terms of processing a crime scene, we're looking to collect evidence, because ultimately what we're doing from the very beginning, I know that you had our district attorney on recently, and I think she walked you through, what happens, kind of cradle to grave on criminal cases and prosecution. But what we're trying to do, in addition to identifying who's responsible and apprehending whoever may be responsible, we want to also collect evidence and information that we can put together and forward to prosecution so that we can have a successful, outcome,
Right.
and ultimately hold whoever has engaged in this activity accountable. So that might mean fingerprint collection, and some people, probably some of the viewers may not know, but that hasn't always been a thing, and when fingerprint technology and the science behind that came about, it was new and wonderful, and but unfortunately, where we're at today is a lot of people engaging in criminal activity are aware of that. So the science is still there. We still make cases from time to time based upon latent fingerprints, which just means fingerprints left behind. But it's not as prevalent as maybe DNA evidence. So it just depends on the variabilities or the variables and the circumstances at a crime scene. But we want to look at all of those things to ensure that we collect those, because if you miss it, you can't really go back and get it.
Right.
But video evidence, I think what everybody has seen recently, that's a big thing. Where we're at, now in 2024, and earlier in my career, in the business that you guys are in, I'm sure that you can understand along with me here. But it's like video technology and equipment used to be really, really cost prohibitive, but now. And there's some really quality stuff out there, and it's not really that expensive. And so we have a lot of people, and I encourage people to put systems at their homes, and a lot of our commercial locations have video cameras, and they're invaluable because it's evidence that may make the case, and that. Well, I'm talking about video stuff. I think it's a nice opportunity to make a plug to, quality video and placing them in the right location. It's super important, because otherwise it might make the difference between you have video that just shows, like, sure enough, there is somebody,
right,
versus it's actually clear enough and it's positioned appropriately so that it actually can give you meaningful stuff instead of just a silhouette.
Right.
And I think you guys all know that. But
well,
yeah, highly encourage people to get video stuff, both businesses and at homes. And it can be a maintenance issue, because time, weeks, months, years go by, and it's like, people kind of give up on it. But when you need it, you need it.
Right. Well, and I don't think that what didn't occur to me before is, I've understand security systems for a long time.
Yeah.
There's a period of time when I installed them. But the high resolution cameras I thought were overkill. But in the kind of situations where you're talking about, the image can be pretty clear, the whole image, but as soon as you zoom in to identify someone, then that picture falls apart. And so then
that's right.
those high resolution images, even though they're just for maintenance, might seem overkill. If there is an incident, they become super critical.
Right. And it's unfortunate, because we've all seen the programs on TV or movies, where all within a 60-minute episode, with commercials, video evidence and other evidence is scientifically analyzed, and they'll zoom in like 60 times, and that license plate is just as clear as it was if you were standing right in front of it. That's not reality.
Yeah, or it's all pixelated, and they here, let's process that, and then it becomes clear. It's like, that's not a thing.
It's not the way it works.
Yeah.
No. But the clearer the better, and it helps us with details that might be the difference maker in the case.
Right.
But continuing on, obviously the variables at the scene determine, how long we're there, obviously tending to the needs of, any people who have been victimized. And, when I say that even means, even though we didn't have anybody in this most recent case that was physically injured, they're still victims.
Oh,
right.
Of course.
And trauma is a real thing, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And, some might say, well, something, very traumatic has happened to them in the past and it didn't affect them. Well, we're all different.
Right.
And we don't know how that's going to impact people. And it's not fair that people just going about their business, that's inflicted upon them. But so we deal with all of that at the scene, but then we have officers, and it's where our partnerships with the sheriff's office and the state police are just invaluable, because when we have cases like that, we just kind of collapse on it. And it's an all hands on deck, like I mentioned before, and we're doing canvasses in the neighborhoods or the areas, talking to as many people as we can to see. We just don't want to leave any stones unturned.
Right.
And in this particular case, a lot of hard work, good fortune, a lot of great support from our community, enabled us to have a positive outcome early in the investigation, which the truth is it just doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah.
But this particular case, investigation is ongoing. And, a lot of people read that, I suppose, in media releases and stuff that we put out. And maybe I should, tell some folks, I think everybody kind of stands on its own, like what it means, but we're not done. we're still talking to people, even evidence that we've collected, we're analyzing things. So, oftentimes, even when the case is being taken, to court for prosecution by our district attorney, there's still components that maybe it's like, hey, let's go back and shore up this, interview or the statement, so the investigation carries on, for a good long while.
Right.
Is it open all the way until they're convicted or not convicted?
Right. Correct.
So it's like because there can be discovery anytime all the way up
That's
until
correct.
the jury makes a decision.
Right.
Well, and part of sometimes in some cases, you're not releasing all of the details to the public.
That's
on
right.
purpose.
Right.
Because some of those critical details is what helps identify the person who only knows those details.
That's right. Yeah. There's times that, you read, whether it's a media release that my agency puts out, or, some law enforcement agency anywhere in the nation, you read what the police have shared. And sometimes, social media has created an opportunity for us to see sometimes what the viewers are thinking or what's on their mind. And oftentimes, people will comment, well, why don't you do this? Or why don't, and
Right.
it's like, we know. But the thing is, it's like there are oftentimes very, very specific reasons why we choose the language that we choose.
Right.
It's not because we're trying to hide things from the public. We want to tell you the whole story.
Right.
But the reality is that but we're working on behalf of the public. And so what we want to do is, place ourselves in the best position of advantage we can for that positive outcome in an investigation. And like you said, Brent, we may have, for instance, there might be a theft case or a robbery case where we won't disclose the specific item that was taken or the amount of money that was taken. And that might be because we know that the person that is responsible for that crime, they know. And then if we have contact with them, maybe then they wouldn't know had we not put it in the media.
Yeah. So if you say a bunch of DeWalt tools were tipped off, were stolen, and you put that out in the public.
Right.
Well, that bad guy, first thing he's going to get rid of is those DeWalt tools.
Right.
That's an extreme.
And there's always,
right.
there's always, competing, issues. For instance, we might need the community's help in identifying someone. But then at the same time, we may not want to put out everything we know about what somebody maybe was wearing or had in their possession. Because maybe that is a way, if we find them in possession of that, is a way that we can connect them to that crime scene.
Right. And if you put out what they're wearing, they're going to get rid of it.
Right. So those are things that we, look, we're human beings. We've had these conversations before, police officers are community members, and they have families, and they're coaches, and they're just like anybody else in the community. But this is their job, and they have training, and we work on this. But it doesn't mean that we're, we don't miss anything.
Right.
But that's the value of working collaboratively, and there's a lot of cases where a police officer might go to a call for service and there's not a whole lot of oversight on
Right.
that. But in cases like this one, there's a lot of eyes and a lot of minds involved, and checks and balances, if
Right.
you will. You know, just ensuring it's like, okay, hey, did we do this? You know, it's check boxes.
Yeah.
You know, and we just want to do the very best job that we can.
No, and I laughed when you said we both did, because, you know, I mean, this TV thing, this production thing, this is all we do. I
Yeah.
mean, that's not all we do, but I mean, we spend 8 hours a day thinking about how could we do this better?
Right.
How could we optimize this? How could we do it easier? I mean,
Right.
those are the things that we think about all the time,
Yeah.
you know. So then when sometimes a side, what do they call a side chair quarterback, or where they, you know, armchair quarterback. Thank you. Yeah, you know, says, well, why don't you, or you know what you should do?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we've been turning that over. I mean, this is all we do.
Yeah.
We turn those things over and over
Yeah.
again, and I'm sure you get that all the time.
Of
Yeah.
course, yeah.
Yeah.
And but we understand, you
Right.
know. And the thing is, it's like there are, you know, there's case law related to search and seizure. There are constitutional rights at play. There are lots of rules by which we have to operate.
Right.
And sometimes, and you know, it's afforded to, you know, people that are in their armchair. You know, it's like, well, why don't you just this? It's like, hey, we know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we would be doing, you know, our community, the people we're serving, a disservice if we didn't do it right.
Right.
And sometimes that is painful because it takes a little bit more time. There's processes that we have to follow for sure, and it's appropriate.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we oftentimes things are very clear, but you know, we have our system of justice in the United States. It's born on this concept of innocent until proven guilty, but we have to honor that. You know, and so we collect evidence that we believe, you know, might be damning to someone, or it could be exculpatory. You know, meaning that it could mean that it's like, hey, we've collected information and evidence that suggests that the person that we thought might have been responsible for this is not. It's our responsibility to do it right, gather the facts, and get it right, so that we can, you know, ensure that we, you know, can make the community as safe as we can. But to cut corners is not the right way.
Can you ever think of a time when your first premonition was wrong, and something, you know, it's like where, because you started as an officer,
Yeah.
you know, where there was a time where you presumed somebody did something, and then evidence came along. It's like, wow, I got that wrong, you know?
Yeah, usually it's in conversations with my wife. Yeah, that I.
Yeah, but you're starting behind right there. You're not starting on an even playing ground.
But we've been married for 31 years now, so I've really channeled those premonitions. I just like, hey, you know, no. All kidding aside, you know, that's a fair question, Brent. But you know, I've been involved in this line of work for so long that I know better than to make assumptions.
Right.
You know,
right.
and that's something that, you know, in training our investigators, particularly, you know, our detectives who are working, you know, the heavier person crimes, maybe a homicide, is, you know, we want all the information. We don't want to draw conclusions, because that can be detrimental to an investigation.
Right.
Because if your psyche is that you're on this mindset track that this is what happened, or this is who's responsible, you might miss something.
Right.
Absolutely.
So the idea is, and that's really what sometimes things seem very clear, but then I'm also swirling around in my mind is like, but what are we missing?
Right.
You know, what else is there?
Right.
You know, and sometimes you might be right. Maybe you have, you know, everything that is presented to you appears as it is.
Right.
But maybe there's someone else that's peripherally involved.
Right.
You know, maybe there's a conspiracy involved in this, you know. And so it really behooves us, you know, in this line of work, and when we're building investigations based upon evidence and fact and you know, statements that we can corroborate, it's like, be open-minded and not narrow it in, you know.
Yeah.
Bud, I got a comment. Bud says, now you're meddling about us armchair people. And that's funny because I call him my armchair quarterback during football.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then Nolan Moscow says, LGPD, Union County Sheriff's Office is always keeping the community safe. And Bud said, honest and integrity always wins trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
So my son-in-law Kyle,
Yeah.
it works for the sheriff's department, and we were, as a family, we went down when he graduated from the academy. And the guy that spoke that particular day, one of the things that he said, just keep in mind that when you interact with somebody, they're probably having a really bad day.
Yeah.
And if you look at if you look at their life as a book, this particular day is a page in their life. Yeah.
Right.
And although they might be totally guilty of what might be, it doesn't necessarily mean that's who they are. That's not their whole life.
I've heard him say that
Yeah,
before,
right.
actually.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, is that something you've experienced? I'm sure you have, where you've run into somebody and then later on you've seen them in a different light.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Many times, and it's really important. The job that police officers, deputies, the troopers are doing. It's like, we have a system where it's purposely designed where it's like it's not for me to judge people. I have a specific job in our system in order to maintain safety within our communities. But it's not for me to dole out consequence or even to identify guilt or innocence. My job is to respond and ensure that whatever is going on, we restore safety, and then gather information and present that to our district attorney, in this case, to our prosecutor, if the circumstances lead us that direction. And we have an entire other component of the criminal justice system that it's their job to make the accusation and then determine whether or not somebody is guilty or innocent. And if they're guilty, then what is the consequence?
Right.
And that is not the job of the police. And it behooves us, and we do this in training with new police officers to ensure that they have the right mindset. I'll slow it down and just give you an example that I think might be meaningful, because we talk about this with new police officers. It's like a traffic stop. A person might be speeding or committing some other traffic violation. A police officer stops them, and like you mentioned, Brent, it's like we work hard on the character of our officers and the way that my officers know what my expectations are of them, and they need to treat people the way that they would want their brother to be treated if it was them that was driving that vehicle.
Right.
But they talk to them, explain why they stopped them, and they will make a discretionary decision based upon the circumstances at the time. It shouldn't be based on attitude. It shouldn't be based on, those kinds of personal feelings. But it's like, look, do you feel like that your contact with this person will change their driving behavior, or do you need to write them a citation and send them to see the judge?
Right.
And those are like discretionary decisions, but at that moment in time, we're not the ones that are deciding, if this person should have consequence. If you get a citation, sure, it probably feels like consequence, but the reality is it's like, you still have your opportunity to go to court and explain. It's like, hey, the officer didn't see what they say they saw or what they think they saw. So it's a system, and I think it's really important that we all remember what our place is in that and honor that.
Yeah. So the other day, Tuesday, I had an outpatient knee procedure up here at the hospital, and they didn't put me out, but they gave me enough medication that I was, loopy. Apparently I talked through the entire procedure. But afterwards, not only did they have Tanya take me home, but they had her stay with me because my judgment was potentially impaired, and they had seen that, and you know where I'm going with this. Is that when we see a robbery thing like, what happened the other day and the circumstances around that. It's like, I mean, sure, you get that all the time. It's like, what were they thinking? Their judgment, what impairs? And I know the answer to this question, but what are you seeing that impairs people's judgment in those situations? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll speak to that in a minute. But I think what you're part of the investigation that we do on many crimes, Brent, is trying to identify motive.
Right.
And that might, if somebody doesn't know what that means, they've probably heard it. But essentially, it's like, why did somebody do this? What is motivating them to commit this crime?
Right.
Unfortunately, and I think most viewers know this, that there are a lot of crimes such as that are motivated by addiction. And it's an unfortunate thing, but that's a part of this greater conversation that we've been having, not only locally, the three of us have had this, but state and nationwide, about drug policy, because it's not the notion that if we can decriminalize or legalize certain substances, the notion that it's victimless. What I can tell you, my personal professional experience is that it's not. We have people's, their judgment is altered. They do things that they probably wouldn't do if they weren't being altered or motivated by addiction. And, we have, crimes inflicted upon children and, all kinds of abuse and things like that are also exacerbated by that. So it highlights the importance of, some of the legislation in House Bill 4002 that's going to change some of that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said it like that, because we talked about this a little bit before. Like, I'm glad you said addiction and not drugs, because the impairment isn't like them being high. Most of the time, people aren't going to go rob a place when they're high. The impairment is the addiction and the need for that drug. Right.
Yeah. And so, look, it's not my area of expertise, but I do have expertise based upon what I've been doing in this community for so long.
Right.
And what I can tell you is what I have seen is addiction. It impacts people's lives, and it impacts not just their life, it impacts their family's life. It impacts, if they have or had an employer, it impacts them. It impacts their children and, kids at school. It's just so, there's ripples in a pond.
Right.
And so addiction is, it's
real.
It's a real thing, and it's troublesome.
Well, and let me draw a clearer line of what it is you're saying, is that once somebody is addicted, then they're to the point where their judgment is impaired, and they will do anything to satisfy whatever it is that they're feeling. And so then one of the unintended consequences of decriminalizing some of these drugs, so more people are addicted, and so then you have more burglaries, more property crime, more. Is that? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah. And just quality of life things in a community,
Right.
because, here's the thing. It's like this is a multi-pronged, discussion, and the solution is multi-pronged, because, we're not going to just prosecute and consequence people out of this problem. We also need very robust, more so than we've ever had before. We need treatment. We need the mechanisms to get people healthy and back on the right track. But part of that is that's the multi-pronged. There has to be consequence, because the average person, when they're in the throes of addiction, they're not going to voluntarily make that change.
Right.
Because what's happening is the chemicals are changing brain science, and so they can't do it. And I've known quite a number of people that were able to get well, get clean, and somewhere downstream, cross paths with them, and they, the consequence, be it maybe arrest, it might even be prison. They will say, and their family will say too, that it saved their life. Yeah. I'm not suggesting that September 1st, when possession of small quantities of drugs become an unclassified misdemeanor, that all of a sudden it's a step in the right direction.
Right.
And So, and we just need to apply that and then just keep working at it. And I think that the experience that all of us have had over the course of the last several years, not only locally but in the state, I really hope that people, take the time to dwell on what we have seen and what we've experienced and recognize that we need to, we've implemented a change, but we need to keep that pressure on because we got to make a change.
I think it was a real eye opener for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like people that maybe supported 110 in the beginning, or is it 110? Is that right?
Yeah, Measure 110.
Yeah, that maybe supported it in the beginning got their eyes opened.
Right.
Well,
it for sure.
It was written in a way where it gained support.
Yeah.
If people didn't know, I know people that said, "Yeah, I voted for that," and man, but I had no idea what it was that was going on. So, how are we doing on treatment? In Union County, what's the plan?
Yeah.
Is something being talked about? And I'm not in the know in that particular thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to watch your interview with the district attorney. I don't know. Did she talk at all?
We didn't talk about that at all.
Yeah. So, both the city of LeGrand and Union County are receiving some. I don't know if you've heard of the opioid settlement money. There's some lawsuits nationwide against some of the large pharmaceutical companies. And so as, the state of Oregon receives some of this money, and then, governmental entities do. And so we've had some discussions to try to use some of that money that both the city of LeGrand and Union County has received as seed money to help with infrastructure that is needed to exactly what you're talking about, because we don't have a detox facility, we don't have a sobering center, we don't have any inpatient treatment in LeGrand or Union County, and this is not like a thing that's like, so your viewers, it's like, well, why don't we? Because we're talking about lots of money, and what we're experiencing is not unlike a lot of other rural areas, and the places that we do have, they're just full. That around the state or around the region, so that's one of the challenges and one of the frustrations that we've had. A lot of people believe that with the passage of Measure 110, that then there was going to be all these treatment options. Well, unfortunately, it seems like that's what happens often is the cart has a way of getting before the horse, and we have all these people that need treatment. The reality is they're not going to voluntarily do it, but when they do, we need to have treatment options readily available right then and right there, not 30 days from now, not 60, not 90 days, because you got to seize upon that opportunity when people want and are willing to do it now, because if you don't get them in, then by next week their mindset has changed. Yeah. Or they may be dead. Let's get real. That might be too much reality for some folks, but we miss those opportunities. So there are efforts, underway and discussions. At the end of the day, though, it comes down to money, and it's not just a dollar figure. We also have to have the workforce, and the staff in order to because there are circumstances that I'm aware of where some grant monies were made available, and then there's challenges in getting the clinicians and the staff to be able to run those things.
It takes a special person to work in a treatment center.
Right. Yeah.
For reals.
So that's part of the ongoing discussion both statewide and locally, Brent. So
here's a tough question that you might not feel like but I'm interested in your opinion about this. In that we know the implications of overdoses and how that has impacted first responders, your department, the fire department, and so on and so forth. Do you think that's contributed to suicide? Because it seems like, either I'm more aware of the suicides in the area, or there isn't. What's your assessment of that? Yeah.
I think behavioral and mental health contributes. This is all, part of the same discussion.
Yeah.
We oftentimes see people who are addicted and are dealing with behavioral and mental health issues. It's not uncommon that we aren't certain which came first. whether there was some mental health issue and that individual started self-medicating with, illicit or street drugs, which is never a good recipe, but, maybe they think that that's the only thing. I mean, I've had people tell me, Brent, that they think that methamphetamine is the only thing that allows them to function. And that's so, it's ludicrous. I mean, we know that, but that person believes that. I think that then the addiction, the behavioral mental health, I do think that there is a contributing factor to some degree in the increased number or calls for service that we're seeing related to, threatened or attempted suicide.
Yeah. Wow. Well, all heavy stuff.
Heavy stuff, yeah. But let's just,
Yeah.
It doesn't get better, by not talking about it.
Right.
No.
And for many, many years, I think suicide, it's just horrible. It's tough, but, and there's a lot of years where, it's just kind of a taboo topic to talk about.
Right.
And, we recognize that it's like, we do have to talk about it. We have to tell people it's like, look, it's okay if you're not okay, but we just have to have people understand how to recognize that, and then how to provide that person, get them connected to the help because the help is there.
Yeah.
And we're all human beings, the person that tells you that they haven't had a rough day or a rough patch, maybe a bunch of rough patches connected together. It's like, look, we've all got family that have struggled for one reason or the other. And we're human beings. We're not perfect. And, just to be open-minded and willing to accept that it's like, look, it's okay. We just need to get you the help.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm always with the heavy stuff.
No,
it's kind of my business.
That's kind of your job. That's where it is that you are. Yeah.
That's why we're always envious of the firemen, because it's like, everybody loves the firemen. A lot of times, the fire truck comes, it's got the big sprinkler at crazy days, but no.
But what a
the
lot
job
of people,
that we do is heavy.
What a lot of people don't know is that, that's the ambulance dudes too. They're the ones that are the first responders in some of those, or the second responders or whatever. But they're the ones that are, so that's, and I see the stress on their face, I think I don't know, this just I'm speaking for them, but I think if all they had to do was put out fires, their life would be easier. But it's all of that other stuff that comes along.
And we've talked also before about how we're doing things differently than what we have historically in the first responder world in terms of, being aware and implementing programs and processes to try to take care of the well-being of our first responders in ways that we didn't before, because we know the work that they're doing day in and day out, the volume of calls for service, and the types of calls for service. It's hard on them. And the truth is that a lot of times, one of the components that's really difficult is that they're not able to apply a solution that fixes the problem.
Right.
And that's, a lot of folks who are first responders, they kind of have that common character trait of, it's like, we're fixers.
Yeah, we're going to solve this problem.
That's right, yeah. But some of these social issues that we've been discussing and are at the forefront of our discussions these days is they're very challenging issues, and there's no easy fix. And so when our first responders go, oftentimes what we're seeing is one of the symptoms of an underlying problem, whether it's a disturbance in a home or whatever it may be, and the officers really, quite frankly, don't have within their toolbox when they show up at that call for service the ability to fix that right then and there.
Yeah.
And so it very frequently results in multiple calls for service and multiple visits back to that same location.
Got a few comments. Jerry Hopkins says, thank you for your support of the Loveland Safe Ride. Crystal says, it doesn't help with short-staffed in mental health and addiction therapy, which you alluded to. Bud says, doing a great job. LeGrand is fortunate to have you. And Julie says, thank you, Mr. Bell, for all you and the officers do to protect our community.
Yeah, well, we appreciate the support, and I got to tell you, you know how long I about called him Beaver. You know how long Jerry, when we were little kids, we've known, Jerry Hopkins and I have known each other. We went to grade school together. We have known each other since you have memory.
Yeah.
And all of my life. And I never even asked him.
Where you got the name?
Yeah, but it's like when we were
either.
kids, it's like it was always Beaver.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if it was from the TV show.
It was.
Yeah.
He told, he was on the show not too long ago and told us, but I can't remember the exact story. Yeah.
And he's just a neat human being, and if you know his story,
I didn't
think
even
a lot of
know
people,
his first name for a long time.
Yeah. He's a testament to character, because he's had trouble of his own, and he's a good man.
So real quick, before we quit, you've been looking for a 911 supervisor. I mean, talk about your openings a little bit.
Yeah, sure. You know, so on the one hand, it's, you know, you guys, I hope a lot of your viewers see the advertisements and whatnot. Here's the thing, and I've mentioned it before, but I think it's worth saying again, is that when I first started working for the city, for the police department in the early 1990s, there was a lot of turnover, right? And, you know, the longest serving police officers were, I think we had a couple of sergeants that had been there around 9-10 years, and then we had a few that were 5 and 6 years, and everybody else was less than 5 years. Well, we hired and hired and hired, and then we had a stable group of people, and next thing you know, we're 2010, 15, and our average tenure of staff members at the police department is 15 to 20 years.
Wow.
Well, we started retiring people, and you know, community members that's been around for a while. We have a great bunch of people, and I miss them all the time. You know, because that's who I worked with most of my career. But we retired a bunch of people, so we're rebuilding. But we've hired some great police officers, some great dispatchers. But we have some vacancies right now that we're still looking to fill. We have promotional testing on Monday of this coming week for supervisors in the dispatch center. That would be equivalent to a sergeant, you know, on the patrol side of things. I'm going to Salem this afternoon because we have a dispatcher graduating from the police academy tomorrow. And when I became the chief of police, I promised that I would not miss one of those, and I haven't yet, and I don't intend. And yeah, so it's one of the positive things though is that you know, it's not like we're short 2 dispatchers. We had, you know, budget support to add 2 dispatchers in the budget year that we're in right now, but it takes time to get those people on board and trained. So but we're really looking forward to, you know, getting those staff added, because our intent is we're going to change the shift format in the dispatch center. It's going to be an improvement for the community and the people working in there. Essentially, we'll have a minimum staffing of 2 911 dispatchers on duty at all times. We try real hard right now to do that, but there are maybe some hours of the early mornings where there's only 1 dispatcher there, and it's not ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and do they go to their own academy, or is the general academy?
Yeah, so the state's Public Safety Academy, DPSST, Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, it is in Salem, and so it's a Public Safety Academy, so that's where the training for police officers, firefighters, and 911 dispatchers, corrections, you know, so in law enforcement, the corrections folks all go there. They have obviously different curriculum.
Tracks. Okay,
and things
yeah,
like
that's what I've, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so our dispatchers are not in, they don't go to the firing range.
They don't do it.
That'd be awesome.
I'm sure they would love it,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
but no, they have very specific training that they do, but there's a lot of similarities, and you know, when we're talking about you know, what we're charged to do, and we're all working towards a similar mission, you know, so yeah, a lot of that.
But generally, the the guys that work for the police department and that work for Union County Sheriff, they're in the same track. I mean,
That's exactly
the
right.
Officers,
Yep.
right? Okay,
That's
yeah.
exactly right. So every
Or
police
HP,
officer,
yeah.
it makes no difference if you're a municipal police officer, a county deputy sheriff, or a state trooper.
Yeah.
The curriculum for the basic police academy is the same.
Right.
And it's the same for a 911 dispatcher statewide.
Yeah.
So they go to, but then each agency, may have training that they also want to impart on. So there is some of our own brand, and that happens in our field training program. And like the state police, they do some of their own. I think they have a pre-academy. They send their troopers to a course, before they actually enter the basic police academy. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Well, thank you, Gary.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, really
It's always
appreciate
nice
you
talking
being
to you
here,
guys.
and always a great conversation.
Sure.
Yep.
Yep.
You want to get us out of here?
Let's do it. On this day, August 8th,
Yes.
1609, the Venetian Senate examined Galileo's very first telescope. So the first telescope was presented to the Venetian Council in 1609 on this day. 1854 on this day, Smith & Wesson patented metal bullet cartridges. 1937 on this day, the Bonneville Dam on the Columbia River begins producing power.
What year?
1937.
Thank you.
1988 on this day, rap group NWA releases their controversial debut studio album, Straight Outta Compton. 2017 on this day, the Walt Disney Company announces plans to create its own streaming service, canceling ties with Netflix. On this day, the #1 movie in the country in 1994, Clear and Present Danger. And the quote, staying with the Olympic theme, the quote comes from the most decorated Olympian of all time. And I say Olympian, not just American, Olympian of all time, Michael Phelps. You can't put a time limit on anything. The more you dream, the farther you get. One more time. You can't put a time limit on anything. The more you dream, the farther you get. And if you don't believe me about Michael Phelps, Google him. There's a picture of him wearing all 28 of his Olympic medals.
28. That's crazy.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's all. Most people train their whole life for one.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a Cuban wrestler that just won his 5th Olympic gold in a row in Greco wrestling, which is a span of a long time, BC. A long time. 16 years. If you start with the first one, it's 4 years, right? So 4, 4, 4, 4.
Right.
Yeah, 16 years of dominating, being the best in the world.
What class is he?
At Greco-Roman, I don't know what weight he is, but he's I think he's a super heavyweight. So whatever weight that is in kilograms. But to dominate that kind of a sport for that long is crazy. Most guys are in their prime wrestling, like 27, 26, right in that area.
Yeah.
But he's been in his prime for 20 years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild.
Alrighty. Hey, thank you, man.
Welcome.
Yeah, appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank
All
you.
right. We'll see you guys Tuesday.